just, in way of context, I'm a lawyer of 30 years, and I practiced law for 20 years. I had some good success in using the Internet to bring in work in a small town in Wisconsin. I'm not a technologist at heart, so the things that I'm going to be sharing, are things that anybody can easily do. They're certainly within the reach of any lawyer that is willing to put the needs of others first before their own. And so I had some good success in answering people's questions online back in those days at AOL. Obviously the world has changed since 1996, but the concept of going out where people are and engaging them, having empathy for them, listening to the questions that they're talking about remains the same, and that becomes one of the key principles of blogging. LexBlog has been around for 7 years, 6.5 years. We're the leading provider of blogging and social media solutions to law firms around the world. We have a network of about 3,500 lawyers on which they're blogging in about 1,000 blogs. Add about probably 100, 150 lawyers a month to the network, with about 25 or 30 new blogs coming on the network a month.
Well, it's quite impressive, and we look forward to the expertise and experiences that you'll be sharing with us of your own, and maybe even some client stories that we'll hear today. Specifically, getting into the reasons for blogging is where we'll start. Reasons being for professional development and for business development. And Kevin, do you kind of want to walk us through these different types of reasons you would get into blogging?
Sure. I think oftentimes lawyers lose sight, or we lose sight of the fact of what brings in the good work and what does it mean to be a lawyer. When I went to law school in the late 70s, there was no such thing as marketing. If somebody would have come in and said that we're going to have a person that's involved in business development and marketing for law firms talk about what you may do, we may say, well, that's wonderful, but we'd be disbarred if we partook in that type of activity. What we were told to do, and it turned out to be good advice, be a good lawyer. What did that mean? That meant staying up to speed, reading what we could read. You read not only things in the law, but you read things in the business world, how to be a better person, how to provide better client service, how to put teams together. What does that mean in running a law office? You mentored from other people. You joined associations in which you met good lawyers. For me, that meant, as a plaintiff's trial lawyer, joining my state trial lawyers association. Sure, that costs more than joining the local bar association, but I met the leading trial lawyers in my state. Then it meant being on the board member of my state trial lawyers association. Why? Because I would serve on committees with those people. I went to meetings with those people. They were great lawyers. Take it another step up, be involved in the American Board of Trial Advocacy. That was just a cream of the crop of lawyers from around the country on both the plaintiffs and the defense side. I was learning a lot. I got active in what was known as Association of Trial Lawyers of America then. Nationally became a sustaining member, went to their conferences. Why? Because I learned a lot. And if you really think about, who are the best, in your town, just to take estate planning lawyers and said, who are the best estate planning lawyers in my town or my metro area? And most lawyers could probably identify them, and probably most financial counselors and planners could too. And ask yourself, are they starved for work? Are they out there hustling to get the next case? No, they're not. How did they get to be good lawyers? They worked hard at it. They got to be a good lawyer, and that brought in work. The better lawyer you are, the more work you're going to bring in. It becomes transparent to people you're involved in transactional matters with or litigation. Your reputation grows. Your word of mouth grows. So when it comes to blogging, one of the things that lawyers find a surprise is the professional development. They're becoming better lawyers because blogging is not just about writing content. It's listening. It's partaking in a conversation. If I'm blogging on, let's use estate planning again as an example. What am I doing? Well, one of the most important things I'm going to be doing is following good blogs written by good estate planning lawyers. Maybe there's also blogs written by financial planners, blogs that have tremendous influence because they have great followers. I'm referencing what they have to say. I'm reading it. I'm digesting it. I'm providing my insight and commentary as a follow-on. I'm getting to know those people because they've started to follow my blog. Maybe I see them at a conference, and we don't have to go through all the pleasantries of me coming up and saying, "Boy, it'd be an honor to get to know you." They're looking as an equal. We're sitting down, we're talking. I may be able to call them up on the phone saying, I'm working on this type of matter, and I'd like to bounce this by you. There's tremendous professional development from blogging, and with that comes, business development and follow on. But I think it's critically important for lawyers to appreciate that. Lawyers don't just blog for, marketing or business development. They blog for professional development, and with that also comes business development.
I think that makes a great point, that it's a really a good way to expand and to build upon the career that you've already started, reaching out, getting to know other people, and then also refining your skill, writing every day or writing once a week or twice a week or whatever your regimen may be, just helps expand the education that you've already invested in.
You're going to do that. I mean, I was speaking in Toronto last Saturday, and there was a reception at the NHL Hall of Fame in Toronto the night before, and one of the lawyers there was explaining blogging to another lawyer, and he said, it's what you already do as a lawyer. He was giving an example of having, he goes, I have to stay up to speed on certain issues as a lawyer. He's in advertising law. He had written a blog post on rebates. He read it, he consumed it, he prepared a summary, all of which he said he used to do in his practice anyway to stay up to speed on things. Puts that up on a blog, he ends up with Apple Computer as a client because they had contacted him from something that he had read. Now, on the business development side of the reason for blogging, there's certainly that component. You are going to blog for business development. That's a goal, no question about it. So it's not just for professional development. You're blogging for business development, and you're going to get work if you're blogging effectively and doing some of the things that we're going to talk about this morning or this afternoon.
And let's talk about advertising, using your blog as a means for business development and advertising. No one, likes to spend their free time being sold to, and no one really looks for that pitch anymore. They want a relationship. They want a company that they're familiar with, that's experienced in what they're looking for. Using your blog as a tool to convey this message can be very powerful. And can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, today 14% of people trust advertising. That's shockingly low. And there's a couple different reasons for that. Just advertising in general is not trusted as much because there's just so much of it coming at us. You take that combined with corporate brands being trusted less and less. And, what's the second reason for advertising trusted less and less and corporate brands not being trusted as much? I don't think it's just that corporate brands are, that corporations are evil people. It's just that there are other ways to find out about things, many, many more than used to be. We are most likely to rely on people that we trust. And so instead of relying on a corporate brand or relying on advertising, we rely on alternative sources of information. Today, if you could imagine a map of social media and what that would include. Now, maybe in the far lower right hand, we'd see CBS News. Well, CBS News was the only way that I got news and information growing up in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was the only TV station we had. When Walter Cronkite read the news, that's what we got at 5:30. Tremendous influencer. We had a local newspaper, to what extent it was a newspaper, but that was it. That was the only, these were the sense of resources that we had. Well, today, if you took that social media map and you put on it and you said, well, gee, here's Twitter over here, here's blogging over here, here's Facebook over here, you just go on and on. All these social media sources of information that can come to us. So we're apt not to trust advertising. We're apt not to trust a corporate brand. We're going to trust what's in this conversation. Marketing is a conversation. It is not, people talking at people. So lawyers need to understand that. And the big point is, where would you put your money if you are going to be working on business development and marketing as a lawyer? Would you put your money where there's only a 14% chance of return? You'd say, well, gee, why would I do that? But if you and your partners get together in the conference room and you talk about we have to do something when it comes to the Internet because the Internet's so important, they go, oh, that's right. My God, we got to update the website. What's your website? It's your corporate branding and advertising. I don't care what you do to it. it's going to look good. It's great. It has information on your background. It has information on the type of work that you guys do. I hope it has information about, your legal assistants and your executive assistants, the people that are helping you, so that they can be contacted in your absence. But it is an advertisement, and so your goal when it comes to the internet is not to drive people to my website, because your website is not something that's going to be trusted. It's one point, among any things that we may look at, but it's not how we're going to influence people. I mean, imagine, if your dishwasher breaks, on a Friday afternoon, are you and your husband, you and your wife going to go to Maytag's site and read about Maytag's dishwasher and say, well, honey, we're obviously going to buy a Maytag. Look at the wonderful things that are on this website, all about it. Absolutely not. You're not going to do that. And that's only for a $500 expense. What are you going to do? You're going to look at reviews. You're going to look at what other people were saying about dishwashers. You may go to Consumer Reports. If you see the dishwasher at Maytag site, you're probably going to Google the name of that dishwasher and see what's being said about that dishwasher. It's the same thing with lawyers, and I would hope, that a lawyer that may cost us an hour as much as a dishwasher would cost, that people would spend that much time reviewing the lawyer, and I think in many cases they do. So what are they looking at? Well, your most important thing to be Googled on is your name. And so when they Google your name, what do they see? Do they see citations to what you may have said before? Do they see you quoted in newspapers? Do they see you speaking at conferences? Do they see people having shared your information on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn? If not, you're missing out on something. You're basically saying, I'm relying on advertising. I'm relying on my brand, those type of things. I mean, lawyers will spend time talking about what my logo ought to look like, somehow that their logo is going to bring in more work. If you even went all the way to the largest law firms in the country and asked, the managing partner of Latham & Watkins or Skadden Arps or Sidley Austin, these firms, have you ever brought any work in as a result of your website? And their answer would be no. Of course we have not. It comes in by virtue of other things we're going to be talking about today.
Britton, let's break down the principles of social media and blogging: engagement, networking, relationships, and word of mouth, which we just spoke a little bit about. Those are 4 key components that really differentiate a stagnant or static blog from those that are going to really reach out and grab your audience.
Yeah, and thanks for putting the graphics on these, Chelsea. I should steal them from you. They look much better than my bulleted words. I use pictures sometimes. But yeah, I think these are the principles you want to be thinking about. If I'm invited into a conference room at a law firm, and I do round tables around the country, or I may say, hey, I'd like to come out and talk about just social media and blogging. And we don't talk about what is a good blog post, or how do I start a blog, or these type of things, or how much time it takes to start with. What we talk about are what are the principles behind this? Why might a lawyer want to blog? And I include blogging inside the social media umbrella. But the first is for engagement. If you ask that managing partner of a large firm, if you ask a solo practitioner in a town that does criminal defense work, it could be anything. It could be estate planning. It could be family law. It could be business corporate work. It could be real estate. It could be personal injury. And I'm not talking from the perspective of somebody that didn't advertise. I did, but my best clients always came by word of mouth. I mean, I was a personal injury lawyer. I was a plaintiff's trial lawyer. We had ads in the Yellow Pages. We had ads on TV, and every year at the end of the year, when I'd sit down and say, well, where did the best work come from? It came by word of mouth. Whether it was a doctor in town, whether it was even an insurance company, that I may be suing later on, whether it was somebody that read about me in the newspaper being involved in a case, whether it was somebody that met me on the civic board, whether it was somebody that met me through a running club, it all came by virtue of relationships. And so if you're thinking at the end of the day relationships in this stack of things, well, how do you get relationships? How do you build relationships? How do you nurture existing relationships? And think about your clients, prospective clients, and influencers, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But how do you engage those people? Well, by its very nature, you have to listen. You listen to engage people. You have to have empathy for people. If you want to pick up a great book on social media, pick up Brian Solis's book, S-O-L-I-S. Its title is, I think it's Engage or Engagement. And he, he makes the point that people don't come to the internet. They don't come to blogs. They don't come to Twitter or LinkedIn to have you push information at them. They're looking for you to be listening. They're looking for you to engage them. And so you have to be thinking about engaging. And who do you engage? If you ask this lawyer how they build their work by word of mouth, they would say through networking. I don't go out on the street, in downtown Chicago and Michigan Ave and start networking with everybody, and that would be foolish. I may network where my target audience may be, with the goal being to build relationships. Why would you build relationships? To have word of mouth. And so when you come online and you begin to blog, or you may comment on another person's blog, all you're doing is talking about building relationships. And I know that, I've been in everyone's shoes before. I sat at the dinner table on Friday night with my wife out to eat, and how's this year going to be? It's October. Well, I don't know. It's an okay year, but not as good as last year. How many trials do we have coming down before now and the end of the year? Well, gee, only one. Well, gee, that means only one thing could settle. You get worried, and you want to do more to bring in more work sooner. But it is all relationships. It's a matter of knocking pool balls around on a table, keeping them moving. You don't know which ball's going in. You don't know which hole's going in. But you've got to build these relationships. There was a lawyer, Steve Farber, from, my gosh, I can't remember. I should remember the name of the firm right now, and I cannot. In Denver. He's the president and founder of a 200-lawyer firm, and Brownstein and Hyatt. And he was speaking before me at Denver University a couple weeks ago, and he was talking on business development issues to the Denver University alumni, or probably 150 in attendance, and he goes, this is all about relationships. That's all it is. And you can't say, well, gee, that's Steve Farber. He's classified as a power broker in Denver because he has relationships with local political leaders in Washington, D.C., and he's doing all this upskill work. That's not me. Well, it is you. And what he talked about was relationships that are generated, and he called them in baskets. Maybe you have, a basket where you're involved in civic matters because you believe in, a local cancer society. Maybe you're involved in a basket where you coach Little League, or you coach soccer, or you're involved in the PTA, association. Why do you do those things, or why have lawyers done those for years? Because of relationships. Now, we don't know if that person or a person on the board is going to ask, is going to have unfortunately have a family member or friend injured, and they're going to be looking for a lawyer to represent them. But maybe they have, a real estate matter, but they know you're a lawyer, and they've come to trust you because they've gotten to know you. Well, they're going to ask you about it. Maybe you don't do that sort of work. You refer it to another lawyer. You're using your network. That other lawyer gets to know what you do, and they thank you for those things. That's what this is all about. So when you're blogging, what you're doing is you're building relationships in a very targeted way, and you're building a word-of-mouth presence. People get to know what it is you do. They get to know a little bit about you, and you build trust. And that's what this is about. To be a good lawyer, and to get work, you want to be a trusted advisor. There's another good book out there. I think it's written by David Meister on becoming a trusted advisor as a lawyer. And we can't lose sight of the fact that, gee, I'm down here. I'm only doing family law in Topeka. I'm not, somebody that David Meister would be talking about. I'm not Steve Farber. I'm not Kevin O'Keefe. Well, you are. This is all this stuff is about, because long before we had the internet, people got their work by virtue of relationships. Whether they were doing real estate work in Topeka, or whether they were doing estate planning or corporate securities work in New York City. So when it comes to blogging, if you're blogging in Topeka on real estate, you're going to network, with the type of audience. You may highlight local realtors. You may cover local real estate events. You may interview, a local title company as to the type of things that they do to build a relationship with them. You may reference articles in the Topeka Business Journal or the Topeka main newspaper on real estate matters to get to know the authors or the reporters at the Business Journal and get to know the newspaper. That's all relationships, relationships that ultimately lead to work. So that's a mouthful, and maybe it's a lot of rambling, but I believe that that's what this is all about.
And I think that that's also a great point, is that you can also use blogging to help build and solidify the relationships that you've started offline or online.
No, absolutely you do. I mean, think about it. With imagine a client that you may have represented. You don't have some matter going on right now, but you send something directly from the blog. You use the email, a post to a person. They can subscribe by virtue of email updates. They can get RSS feeds that come into the reader. But you took a couple minutes and you actually went to the blog itself, put in their email address, and forwarded a post to them with a short note and said, Ernie, this is something that we were talking about last year on that matter. I shared this on my blog. Wonderful. That's nurturing existing relationships. You've got matters that are going on regarding a divorce, and you're sharing answers to common questions, and clients are feeling like, wow, this is wonderful. Your post once a week or every other week, 26 times a year, you seem to answer the questions that I'm concerned about. Well, of course, because you've listened to the type of questions that all of your clients have. You're nurturing relationships, and think what your clients do for you. The more they like you, the more apt they're going to be to spread word about you. I was reading a post online today about the value of client service, and it was amazing what the statistics were bearing out as to what a satisfied and happy client will do for you. And it doesn't take much to turn those clients from reasonably satisfied clients to raving fans. I mean, just fans. I mean, imagine a client that's watching you share things that you've seen in articles across the country. You're doing family law, and you're following certain keywords and key phrases so that you have a newsreader set up to monitor particular blogs or particular subjects, and you see an article in the San Diego Union related to an issue that your clients may face, on visitation issues, and you share it. Maybe it was about 7 points that spouses should take into consideration, or ex-spouses should take into consideration with the holiday season approaching and visitation. And you share that with your clients and maybe add a couple more. And they're just looking at you going, wow, this is really something. My lawyer really cares. My lawyer really stays up to speed. I like a lawyer that stays up to speed with these things. You're nurturing relationships with existing clients. If you have referral sources or there's local people in town, you nurture relationships by maybe highlighting them or sharing news and information with them. That's all this is about.
And I also think that you can use blogging and these engagement and relationship building techniques inside of your business as well, whether it be to promote and congratulate successes inside of the company, or for recruitment, offering new positions, demonstrating that not only that your company is transparent, but you're a good company to work for, that you celebrate and congratulate the successes of your employees or partners, or just have that human element that we're not necessarily a static or an unapproachable business to work with.
Yeah, it'll come across. I don't do a whole lot of that in my blogging. I don't see our clients or lawyers in our network do too much of it, but it'll come across in the way that you blog, because you blog in a conversational tone. You don't blog in the way that you're providing legal updates. I mean, if somebody has the good fortune to sit down next to a lawyer flying into town, they're getting insight and commentary, if they're in an ancillary business from this lawyer. And it's good stuff. Now, certainly the lawyer isn't shouting legal updates to them. They're talking in a conversational tone. They may be apt to tell stories about similar circumstances or particular matters, much like I'm doing today by sharing examples of what I see out there. That conversational tone demonstrates you're approachable. I mean, imagine just writing down questions that you get as a lawyer from prospective clients and current clients, and answering those on a blog. You're not saying, gee, I got a call from Chelsea Lambert, she's got this type of situation going on about this, but you are saying, I got a call from somebody that I've worked with in the past that's going to refer a client up to me regarding such and such, and what you talked about briefly in a good, nice blog post, 2, 3, or 4 paragraphs. What does that do? Well, it demonstrates that people respect your judgment. They contact you, that maybe want to refer somebody to. You're willing to take these calls. Oh my gosh, a lawyer will take a call. I don't care if you put free consultation, your 800 number on the top of your website. Why would anybody believe that? There's no way for anybody to believe that you have that free consultation, because people don't trust lawyers. They don't trust us. So there must be some scheme going on. What are they going to do after that free consultation? Are they going to try to get their claws in me? Are they going to charge my credit card in some way? Well, wow, you're on your blog, you're demonstrating that people actually do call you and how you responded. You're worried about search engine optimization. Well, screw, paying the snake oil salesmen that are going to sell you links in maybe an unethical type of way, and maybe a way that's going to get you in trouble with Google. People aren't just searching a estate planning lawyer in Topeka. They're searching a long tail. They're searching what their particular question is, maybe about they're selling their business and what they have to do with their family and whatever. You answering questions, you're now writing for search. You're an expert on search in your area. Hell, you get all the questions as a lawyer. You just keep track of those questions and answer them. Search takes care of itself. And then you're demonstrating that you have just common sense knowledge on these subjects. This isn't just for younger people or younger lawyers. On our network, the average age is probably 45 and older. They're more comfortable with the subjects that they're dealing with. They're more comfortable with the importance of relationships. They understand it's about word of mouth and networking.
Great, and the keys to social media and blogging, building more on that topic of really building that social media equity, establishing trust, listening to what your peers and the audience is asking for, value, and actually going out.
Yeah. The social media equity was a term that I heard by somebody that became a client. And to just give you an example of how people can become clients in different ways. I was speaking to a legal marketing association group, which had both people in legal marketing and lawyers down in Portland last summer. And the night before, I get an email from a lawyer down there, Craig Bachman at Lane Powell, and he says, "Kevin, I know you're going to be coming down here tomorrow. You got time to stop by? I'd like to talk with you." And I'm thinking, gosh, I really don't. I got to take the train back, right afterwards. But sure, I'll stop by. And I'm thinking I'm going to see a relatively young person that just wants to ask me about blogs or something. And I walk in, and bear with me in this story. I'll put some context in it, give you some context on things. But he's a senior lawyer. He's probably 62, 63 years old. I walk into his office. It's filled with old-time golf art and old wooden golf clubs. The last person you'd think would be thinking about blogging and social media. And I sit down, and he says, "I got 2 things I want to ask you. I've never met this person before." And he says, one, would you be interested in speaking or keynoting on a program we're going to do one day in Portland, one day in Seattle for leading corporate people? It's going to be about social media and employment issues, but I'd like you to to keynote on what social media and blogging is all about. I'm going, yeah, that'd be great, Craig. And then the second thing he says is, we want to retain you, your company, but first thing we got to do is find out what it is you do. He didn't even know what we did, and he wanted to hire us. And that was an amazing story, and he ultimately, their firm became a client of ours. And the last thing he said was, until you told me about TweetDeck, which is a solution that you can, an application you download for free so you can use Twitter. He goes, I really didn't understand this Web 2.0 marketing type of thing. He goes, but once I used Twitter, then it allowed me to connect with business leaders here in Portland. That was fascinating to me. Now, I connected with him through my blog that he read something about how I wrote about TweetDeck, and apparently he'd been following my blog a long time. But I asked Craig to explain to the audience. We were sitting around in easy chairs in front of the audience when we spoke in Portland and Seattle. I said, well, tell people about this story. And he said, you had built trust with me. I knew that you were the real deal. And I could trust you. I knew you. And then he went on and also talked about social media equity. It was a term that he had. He goes by somebody giving of themselves on the internet, giving information away. They were building social media equity. It allowed them to then share their own things, not about their company, but maybe about the subject that they may be writing about on their blog, to be trusted. And what I mean by that is that you can have everything you want so long as you help enough other people get everything they want. That's the leading rule of the internet. It came from a guy named Zig Ziglar. They used to sell pots and pans door to door. You have to give. You have to build equity. And on a blog, you share what you see. You don't talk about yourself. You comment on articles that you may see. You comment on blog posts. I mean by comment, you can leave a comment at those places, but you can also take that blog post, reference it, add your insight and commentary. You're building social media equity by giving away. When I use Twitter, I don't tweet my own stuff. I see really good things in my reader because I listen. And then when I see a good article, I share it with my followers. I'm building social media equity. So when it comes time that I write a blog post, people pass it all over on Twitter. They share it on LinkedIn. Some people share it on Facebook. So the leading sources of traffic to my blog come from Twitter. They come from LinkedIn. It comes from other people citing my blog. It doesn't come from search. And that's because I've built trust. People trust what I'm then sharing. Now, to build that trust, I have to listen. And that's an absolute key to blogging. If I asked an audience, and if I was asking an audience last Saturday morning in Toronto, hey, what's the most important thing to blogging? And say good, consistent content is invariably the answer I get. And I said, I don't think that's true, because we just talked about engagement. We talked about building relationships. We talked about networking. It's listening. And so how do you listen with the blog? If you don't use Google Reader or another reader, just, Google tonight, what is Google Reader? R-E-A-D-E-R. How do I use Google Reader? Google will tell you how to do this. What it becomes is your ears, your ears. You need to hear what people are talking about on the subject in which you write. If I'm doing estate planning in Topeka, what am I doing? I'm going to do a search at Google, and maybe it's a particular type of trust, whatever it may be, the terms of art in estate planning. And I'm going to look in Google News, and at the bottom of the page there's going to be a little RSS emblem or RSS initials. Click on it. You get the content automatically flowing into your reader on that search. Maybe that particular type of trust is mentioned in the San Diego Union, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. You'll see it. You do the same search at Google Blog Search. You'll see anybody that's written about that on a blog, whether they're coming from a financial planner or whether it's coming from a lawyer. It's great stuff. And then you also follow leading people on estate planning. Maybe they're lawyers, maybe they're financial planners. Those people that have tremendous influence, tremendous followers, and there's ways to find out, who they are. You're listening to the good stuff, and now you're going to go engage in the conversation. You reference that news story in the New York Times, and what's going to happen when you blog about that? You're going to get a thank you note from the New York Times reporter. Isn't that fascinating? A thank you note from the reporter. Or you're in Topeka, and you're referencing the story in Saturday's paper about a real estate issue because you do real estate work, and you're sharing that on your blog, and you're a good lawyer, and you let the reporter know. Good story. I shared it with the readers, offering my insight and commentary. What happens? They get kudos from their editor because you're a good lawyer. You put their information out to a demographic audience that may not have seen that newspaper. Hell, anybody 35 years or younger, they may not even get the newspaper. You put it now in front of, other lawyers, realtors, title company people that follow your blog. They're extremely appreciative. You can build a relationship with that reporter by saying, we should have coffee sometime. When I'm downtown, we'll get together for lunch. If you need resources on this type of thing, you let me know. I'm happy to help you. Well, you had to listen to do that. And that's the key here is to listen. Listen to your clients, listen to prospective clients, and listen to these influencers that I'm talking about, reporters and the like, and then offer value. It has to be value. It's not about yourself. It's offering information. And the key is to go out. If you're invited to speak at a conference, you wouldn't say, I'm sorry, I only do conferences for realtors or for title company people when they're in my conference room. Of course not. You go out. You have to look at your blog not as being a resource. That's not what it is. If I'm going back to this Topeka real estate law blog, but you don't look at that and say, well, I want it to become the resource for people in Topeka on real estate law. That's not your goal with the blog. Your blog is your voice. It's how you go out and engage and build relationships. You have a busy practice. You may post once a week. You may post every 2 weeks. Maybe you spend 3 hours a month on your blog. You can't be the definitive resource for people in Kansas on real estate issues and the law. You can't be that. But you can go out and network and build relationships. The key is thinking about going out and engaging, not expecting everybody to come to you.
Got it. And blog strategy, the why of how we blog. We've gone over key elements and themes that you should incorporate, but now really the strategy and the return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, you think about these things. I mean, the ROI, there's got to be a return on investment for blogging, and you're going to measure that, by extending the reach of what I'm talking about. Well, that's a given. When you blog, your content is indexed within about 6 minutes if somebody set the thing up right. Also, if somebody's monitoring the words or phrases, if I'm a reporter, that's how I see you. It doesn't matter, if you're going to say, well, my clients don't use an RSS reader, they don't use Twitter, they don't use LinkedIn, they don't use all this crazy stuff. It doesn't matter. The influencers do, reporters do, conference coordinators do, association leaders do, very busy people do. Now, when you have this strategy as to how you're blogging, and you're going to be thinking about it from the standpoint of, I think as we break down the slides following on as to how to do it, but it reflects on your judgment. If you're out there wandering around on your blog, you don't have a strategy behind it, it looks kind of crazy. If you're showing a picture of where you and your wife were at a football game last week, and I'm a pretty busy person, and I've got this content flowing into my reader, I didn't really need that. If your blog doesn't look very good, it reflects on your judgment. So you got to have a strategy. And then you also have to realize your goals. I want to represent these type of people on these type of matters, or this type of company on this type of matter. If you don't blog with a strategy, you are not going to realize your goals. You're going to waste your time, and you're going to look silly, and you don't need to look silly as a lawyer.
Great. And the target audience, when thinking about your blog strategy, who should you really focus on? Do you have more than one blog to focus on different audiences? Tell us a little bit about those strategies.
Yeah, I don't think you need more than one blog, but you do think about who I'm engaging. Every blog post is, who am I engaging with this blog post? And maybe more than one type of audience. But clients, certainly, like we talked about, you engage clients by answering the type of questions they have. You're engaging prospective clients by answering the type of questions that they have. Referral sources, you're putting up information which demonstrates you're an authority. It makes referral sources feel really comfortable referring a matter to you. Imagine how it makes a referral source feel when you put up the type of information that people are looking for. They give them your name. People Google your name, and then they see citations to you from other blogs across the country or in your locale. You're cited by reporters. You're speaking at conferences. Wow, I'm going to get on the phone and call my referrer and just say, thank you so much for referring me to this lawyer. They really know what they're doing. And then the influencers. You write this thing down when you blog. Who are my clients? Who are my prospective clients? Who are my referral sources? And then who are the influencers? And your influencers are bloggers, reporters, association leaders, conference coordinators, publishers, and you have to engage those people. You engage those influencers by referring to what they're writing about. If I refer to something that's on Bill Pollack's blog at American Lawyer Media, he's the CEO there. He sees that I referenced something that he had to say, and I offer my take. I'm engaging him. If I reference John Schwartz, the national legal editor at the New York Times, by referencing an article of his, he'll respond. If I'm critical of that, he responded and then said, well, gee, Kevin, if I had quoted you, would you have been nicer to me? I'm engaging those influencers. If I want to speak at a particular conference, maybe it's even local. Imagine if you wanted to speak in front of the chamber on a particular issue. Well, how you're going to call up the chamber exec and just say, executive director, hello, I'm a wonderful person, I'm a great lawyer, I'd like to come in and talk about this. Now, maybe you'd have some luck, but I think you'd look a little bit flaky. But imagine if you highlighted the fact that the local chamber has great business roundtable events in which they invite in speakers, and you like to go, and here's the speakers coming up for the next couple of months, and you share that with the executive director of the local chamber, the president of the chamber, or person on the board. You say, keep up the great work. I shared it with the people that are following my blog. They're going to thank you when you show up. They're going to thank you. You want to speak in front of a certain bar association which has lawyers that maybe don't do the type of work you do. Maybe you do probate litigation, so you want to go speak in front of estate planning lawyers that don't want to litigate. Highlight the conference. Let the conference coordinator know. Let the association executive director know. They've got ears. They'll see what you're doing. You're going out and engaging influencers. So it's bloggers, reporters. These are all influencers. These are the Walter Cronkites of today. Because when people cite your name, people are going to see it. And, when you're concerned about search engine optimization and getting your blog seen, or how do I advertise my blog, or how do I market my blog, write about other people. Write about the influencers. You'll have more people coming to your blog than you can shake a stick at, for a couple different reasons. One, once your content is properly indexed in a blog, if your blog is done by somebody, that's helping you, that knows how to get your blog found to index the content at Google right, the next thing is incoming votes for how good your blog is. How do you get votes? You get links. Links are the currency of internet conversation. If I reference something that Chelsea wrote, I link to what she wrote. It's telling Google that Chelsea must be an important resource on the subject that I just talked about. So as you're writing about other blogs and they're linking to you and they're important sources, Google's looking at it and saying, this is one darn important resource on Topeka real estate law, because it just got a link from the Topeka newspaper or a real estate law blog in New Hampshire. That's powerful. So you're watching your content rise up in search as people find it. You're increasing your influence because people are citing you and people can Google your name and see that. So you always blog with a strategy and you think about who your target audience is.
And the 3 keys to engagement as part of that strategy, the listening, conversational style of how you write the blog posts, and then adding value, really taking the posts and the time and the effort that you're putting into it to another level.
Yeah, these are going back to the principles we talked about blogging and social media in general. You got to listen. You got to listen. You got to demonstrate that empathy. People want to know that you care. Lawyers don't have a reputation for caring about people. We just don't. Now, I know that's not necessarily true. I love lawyers. I had no intention of leaving the practice of law. I just had the good fortune to fall into understanding how the internet worked and wanting to turn around and help lawyers. But you got to listen and to demonstrate that you're listening. I stumbled into the internet not knowing anything, but just put the keyword in law into AOL, and I saw thousands of questions on the matters that I knew something about. And I'm not exaggerating when I say thousands. I mean thousands on personal injury matters, workers' comp, distressed employees, medical malpractice, and they weren't getting answered. And I just listened to the questions and gave some general information, and people loved it. Instead of getting one nice, note a year or every 2 years that you keep in your drawer about how you made a difference in somebody's life, I was getting 2 of those a day by email. 2 of those a day we were getting in the office. We were just dumbfounded. And I was answering 2 or 3 questions a day. Sometimes I get up to 4 to 7. My assistant would come in and she'd key in the answers while I sat on the corner of my desk. It was awesome. And what was I doing? I was listening. Now, I didn't know that this was a key to engaging people or building intimate relationships online. But when somebody comes from Milwaukee, 200 miles to La Crosse, and says, you're my lawyer, and I'm saying, well, wait a second, I can refer you to somebody I know that's a fellow board member of my State Trial Lawyers Association that knows the Milwaukee area. He knows your doctors, maybe better equipped to be able to help you. His office is close by. No, you're my lawyer. And they're holding up an answer to a question that wasn't their question that I had written online. I was listening, I was engaging, I built a relationship, and I was writing in a conversational style. I didn't provide updates on the law. If I want to get updates on the law, I can hire somebody from, an excellent company in India. I mean, there people have come and met me here in CL. They'll have companies in India. They'll have 300 and some employees, and 280 of them are lawyers, and they're good lawyers, and they're preparing summaries and updates on the law. And I could buy those and put them on a blog. Our clients don't, but you could. But even that person in that company said that clients are not buying content; they're buying judgment. And I think that conversational style, how you write, how you talk. Think about how you write as you talk, and that, how would you talk over a dinner table? If you had the good fortune to go to a cocktail party at the end of a conference that you spoke, would you be shouting updates at people? No. If there was an executive, or there was a local realtor that you'd like to meet because you do real estate work, and you saw them maybe standing next to the bar having a glass of wine with somebody else, it would feel comfortable to maybe start to stand next to them. They may say, "Hey, nice presentation today." You'd start in a conversation, and it wouldn't be shouting updates. You wouldn't say, "Well, just a second, I've got a box of content here that I got to read at you," or "I've got some content with our logo on it and my contact information that's going to tell you how to click back to my website." That would totally turn them off. You'd be remembered if you went around the room and did that, but for all the wrong reasons. You'd be listening, you'd be having a conversation, and you'd add value. You would add value to what people are talking about. It's the value add. What am I adding of value to an ongoing conversation? So, some of you may be hearing, "Well, geez, just saying when you see things, share it." No, it's the value. It's the value. If you see an article, you see a blog post, what have you added to it? You've already brought context to the situation because you wouldn't have shared it unless you thought it was worthwhile to your followers. But it's the value. It's the points you're adding as to what this matters to you or why this matters to you.
Great, and let's talk about bringing those relationships offline into the real world. One of my favorite parts about social networking is the fact that you can meet and engage with some amazing people who you may not have met otherwise. So leveraging your blog to further these relationships is just the beginning.
Yeah, you can't sit on your ass. I mean, this is, you don't just put up a blog and go, "My gosh, the world didn't start contacting me." Now, don't get me wrong. You're going to get contacted, and you're going to pick up clients by virtue of your blog. But why not take it to a whole nother level? I mean, imagine if you were writing that Topeka real estate blog, and you've been doing that for a year and a half, and you've been answering the type of questions that you're getting from people in Kansas. You've been referencing blogs from across the country. You've been referencing financing articles for home finance and different types of mortgages and different, disputes on escrow monies or whatever. You are known by every realtor in the area, every one. And imagine if you said, you dropped, the president of the local real estate company a note and said, "One of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to get out and do roundtable lunches or breakfasts or whatever and, talk about the latest developments in real estate that people seem to be facing in the transactions of, if it lends to be commercial because they're doing more commercial, or if it's residential, whatever it is. I'd be happy to come out. You share a couple bullet points, 5 or 6 that you cover." How many of them would accept? Probably 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. Imagine that. You're in their conference room, and all that they did was say that Sally Smith, whose blog you probably know, needs no introduction, is going to be by and going to be talking, and she's going to talk for about 20 minutes about certain things that she's seeing, and she's going to take questions for the next 40. And you come if you like. Next thing you know, there's going to be 8 or 9 realtors in the room, and you're going to sit there and just talk with them and have a conversation. I mean, how wonderful is that? And you've been introduced by their boss as a leader. That's the type of thing that you do. That's what you absolutely have to do. You go to communities and you meet people. If I'm in New York, I go meet Bill Pollack, the CEO of American Lawyer Media. I email people that I don't even represent and that are not clients of LexBlog and say, "Might you be interested in a roundtable conversation on blogging? Because other lawyers seem to like that, and I'd be happy to stop by." You cannot sit on your ass. You have to go out and to meet people. That's what this is all about. Very few, people go around the country and they speak from law practice management associations, and it's almost like you're getting ready for them to say, you can practice without a client. Everything is no client interaction, trying to reduce the amount of work you have to do. Being a lawyer and having fun is about having relationships with people, and you are probably, in most cases, going to see these people. So go out and build relationships, talk with people, talk with other leaders, the other people that blog, get to know them in your community. It's a wonderful way to really enjoy the practice of law.
And when you're in those in-person situations, how do you work the room? How do you avoid getting tied to one person or engaging in just one conversation for the whole evening?
Yeah, and I think you can use this working the room real world. You can also say working the room in the blog world. And I think these initials sum it up pretty good, either way. Let's look at blogging. You got to find the audience. You're monitoring certain keywords or key phrases in your reader. You're listening to the good sources. You're listening to your questions, the questions that your clients, prospective clients ask. You found the audience. That's key. And you got to listen to them. Whether it's having a reader set up to listen to the influencers or you're listening to your clients, you're listening. And then you engage. You engage in this conversation, and you're empowering them. What does that mean to empower people if you're talking about blogging? Well, you shared information, and you said to them, how would you like to pass this information around to other people? Could you help me do my business development and marketing work for me? Would you be so kind as to do that? Well, they do that. Now, if you put out a piece of information on your real estate law blog or your divorce law blog that's about yourself or about your firm or some kudo, you haven't empowered anybody to do anything. You certainly didn't listen to them or engage them. But if you do share helpful information, they're going to pass it around. You've empowered your audience to help you. So think about these things. Find your audience. Listen to your audience. Engage your audience. Empower your audience. Same things you do offline, you do with your blog.
And lastly, measuring ROI on blogging. Let's break down how you actually track those measurements and how you can see the efforts paying off in front of you.
Yeah, and they're nebulous. I mean, Seth Godin wrote a wonderful blog post yesterday about those things that you do in marketing that are immeasurable are the things that most people don't do. So it gives you the opportunity to just hit a tremendous home run doing those things that other people can't measure, because they're saying, I don't want to do them because I can't measure them, or I want to measure them in this convoluted way. Like with a blog, it's web stats. I was in a conference room of a very good law firm in Toronto last week, and the first thing, at this roundtable conversation that somebody wanted to put on the board were their stats, web stats to the blog. And I said, why do you want to do that? And they go, well, we want to talk about whether this blog is working for us or not. And I said, well, the last place I would start is web stats, because when you contacted our company, my guess is you weren't saying we need to buy some stats. I've never looked at the web stats of LexBlog's corporate site, ever. When I asked my EVP of client development, I said, have you ever looked at it? And he said, well, no, why would I? What the hell would that measure? It doesn't measure anything. So I think you think about these things with your blog. And extend the reach. You've extended your reach. Your content is indexed at Google within 6 minutes. People can monitor the words or phrases. How engaging are you with your blog? Now, I can look at a blog and see that. If I were to ask one of our client services associates, go to this blog and tell me how they're doing, and they would say, well, it's not very engaging. And I said, what do you mean by that? Well, it's not writing in a conversational style where they really feel like they're listening to influencers. They're not linking out to other people in a way that they're engaging. It just doesn't have that level of engagement. And then the next thing I'd look at is influence. How do you measure influence? Well, it's not very hard. How often do people share what you've wrote? Do they share it on Twitter? Not because you've got some automatic update to Twitter, but because you went out and built social media equity and people want to share the things that you put out there. How often does your blog get cited? That would be, on other blogs. That's a measure of influence. Do people share your content at LinkedIn? That's a measure of influence. And then lastly, have you activated your audience? If you went back to your audience and you looked at that list, of clients, prospective clients, referral sources, and influencers, have an influencer called you, a reporter calls you up, which they do all the time with blogs because they're looking for experts. And blogs are 85% of reporters use blogs to get insight on stories and to identify experts. So, okay, you've activated your audience. Has a client come and told you they really like those blog posts that are being updated? Has somebody called you and said they'd like to come in and see you about a subject that you blogged about? You've activated your audience. I mean, it's like, it's like golf. You can't measure how you're doing at first by the score because your score is irrelevant. If somebody's working with you to coaching you on how to play golf, they're not coaching you with how do you put a 4 down or a 3 because a 4 is a better score than an 8. What they're looking at is your swing. How are you swinging? How are you addressing the ball? You're getting better at this. I can see it by the way that you're swinging. It'll take a little bit more time to get the return on investment, but you got to put in the time and do it the right way, because these are the ways that you measure success, not with stats. Because if I have an audience that could be small, and my blog, I think if I went to my stats, I don't think my audience has increased in 4 years, not one iota. But my influence, I think, has increased. I get invited to speak places across the country and even across the world because people think that I know what I'm talking about. I work hard at it by following things. People cite me. I try to be engaging. I've activated my audience. Those are the things that I'm feeling about, and then work coming in the door. So I measure it with these things.
Great, and thank you so much for sharing all of your tips and expertise with us today. We have a couple of questions from our listeners. The first is from Mike. Should I pay for inbound link placement? FindLaw is trying to sell us on its ability to link to hundreds of sites.
Yeah, I mean, do a search, on my blog for FindLaw. You'll probably see some pretty extreme opinions, or what FindLaw may look at is pretty extreme. I wouldn't. When you say, do we want to pay for inbound links, it all depends on what you're doing. I mean, if FindLaw has a section on estate planning for Topeka and they're going to highlight you in the top 4, perhaps, if you think that you need to do that, you then talk to other lawyers, ask them, hey, give me the names of 4 other lawyers that have done this recently in my area. I'd like to give them a call to see whether it works. I mean, I'm always telling, prospective clients, call anybody that blogs with LexBlog. Call people in your town and see whether it works for them. If you're buying, ask them to show you. Say, okay, you're selling me search engine optimization. What is it you're going to do? I would like to see what it is you're going to do. Now, if they won't show you what they're going to do, that would cause me to be a little bit suspicious. But FindLaw's had a practice of creating law content, not to try to demonstrate valuable law content, but just creating a ton of law content on a particular subject, and then at the bottom of the page, linking out to law firms. That's selling links, in my opinion. It's something that Google doesn't stand for. And, FindLaw's, created a little bit of a ruckus with doing that. It's lucrative. I mean, hell, I could sell links to people all day long on my blog, and I'd probably make a lot of money. But it's not what I ought to be doing. It may hurt me, and it may hurt the law firm I'm doing that. There's just lots of different ways that lawyers can market. I mean, imagine me in 1997 when it wasn't FindLaw at that time because West hadn't bought FindLaw yet. But somebody coming down from West and saying, Kevin, we got this internet thing, and we'd like to sell you La Crosse County for personal injury. And I'm just looking at the person going, well, what do you mean you're going to sell me La Crosse County? And they said, well, you'll get the work that's generated over the internet from La Crosse County. I said, well, what are you talking about? I'm already reaching the entire country. I can certainly reach my entire state. I don't need that. So it all depends. You've got lawyers that are spending $200 a month, blogging, with effective blogging companies that are getting lots of work, very lucrative work. So it depends on how much these things cost too.
Thank you. Second question is, if you could say a few words on either the value or lack of value in commenting on somebody else's blog, possibly tying back to the building equity that we spoke about earlier in the session.
I think it's really important, and I don't do as much as I should with it. I follow a lot of blogs, and I follow a lot of blogs that talk about blogging and social media from far smarter people than me. That's how I've learned what I've learned. And there was a post one time that said you ought to spend as much time commenting other blogs as you write on your own. None of us do, because we got too big an egos, it seems, we publish on our own blogs. But if I comment at Seth Godin's blog, I may get 80 people to come over. That's pretty amazing to me. Now, I don't know that people that are reading about marketing, are looking for blog solutions, that LexBlog may provide, or social media solutions, but that's fascinating to me. And we all love a little comment love. Who doesn't? On a law blog, and even a very good law blog, and one that becomes popular, you're probably only going to generate, a couple, 3 comments in a month, because the only people that are more concerned about confidentiality issues, than you might be somebody that's leaving a post on a blog. So when you're going out there and leaving a comment at other places, you're creating a lot of goodwill. And it doesn't just have to be on other blogs. I mean, think about, if I'm in Seattle and I'm doing, family law, or any type of law that's personal plight in nature, personal injury, DUI, other criminal defense, real estate, you name it, bankruptcy. Well, there's some excellent blogs that have tremendous followings in Seattle. There's a West Seattle blog. Well, West Seattle has about 300,000 people that live there. There's probably more people in West Seattle that read that West Seattle blog than read the Seattle Times. Same thing with a blog for Capitol Hill area of Seattle. If I comment on the West Seattle blog, and let's assume it doesn't have anything to do with divorce, and that's what I do, but let's say it has to do something with softball fields that they're building, and my kids play baseball fields. Or my kids play baseball. I join the conversation. I'm getting known. People see my name. They click on my link. The West Seattle blog publisher sees that I've shared something. They look at who I am. Maybe there's another post that has to do with a visitation or custody or whatever, or family law issue at West Seattle, and I comment there. What have I done? I built a tremendous relationship with an influencer there, and other people see me. It's going out. I mean, look at this as a giant coffee shop, and you're there, and this other person that's sitting across the coffee shop, I mean, you don't have a badge on your head that says, hello, I'm a family law lawyer of 25 years. But if somebody that's talking about in the coffee shop an issue that's of interest to them, and you chime into that conversation from afar, they don't even see you somehow, and they can click on you and see what it is you do, that's interesting. So you build a lot of goodwill by going and commenting in other places. Comments at other places also are great blog posts for yourself, because somehow when we comment, we do it very quickly. It feels very spontaneous. Boom, I'm going to comment. And now I can take that comment, maybe clean it up a little bit, maybe even start my own blog post by saying there was a good blog post over here, and I commented on it and shared this. So you do it that way too. I think it's an excellent way to get known.
Great. And the last question is, you had said that a blog is not necessarily a resource, but your voice. Is it effective for 3 or 4 lawyers to share duties writing a blog that is associated with a mid-sized law firm, or should they each have separate blogs?
It's a great question. I get it all the time. There's some wonderful group blogs. Group blogs seem to provide cover for the lawyers because, my gosh, we're going to start a blog. Who's going to keep it updated? They're concerned about that. There's also the comforts in having somebody else blogging as opposed to you. We've got some great blogs that are group blogs. Now, if they're going to be group, remember that they probably ought not to cover every topic. That's a problem, because I was talking with lawyers yesterday in California, and they were saying, we're going to blog on this certain type of probate litigation and personal injury. I'm going, well, that's interesting, but if you're going to build a relationship with a referral source or with people that are litigating trust issues, or probate issues or will issues, are they going to be interested in the questions you're answering on personal injury? Probably not. And so, if you're doing that, then it's just a general blog that you're going to have to build relationships with existing clients, and it's very, very tough to do that, because to build relationships with existing clients or to nurture them further, you've got to share things they're interested in. And to try to share across multiple topics, that can be very, very tough. Now, don't get afraid that, oh my gosh, we can't blog because we do more than one area. Your law firm can create a magazine on a particular topic. If I practiced in La Crosse and I had a partner that did family law, I had another partner that did estate planning, another person that did corporate. If we had a magazine that was on every table around our area on real estate law, that would be valuable to the firm. I mean, no question about it. It doesn't mean that that's all we did. It may describe, in the About section, which is a critical, important section of your blog so people can evaluate you, what it is, who you are, what it is you do. It's not where you went to school and the awards you got, but what is it that you do? Who do you do it for? And it may be broader than what you're blogging on as far as the background of the firm. But you have single blogs too, and there's advantages to both. When I met with a firm in Minneapolis this summer and we were doing a round table, I asked them to introduce themselves, and they came in and they introduced themselves by what they covered on the blog. So if you have a blog with 3 or 4 people, each of them may have slightly different interests, so you're picking up those individual interests. So you can do either a single one or a group one. There's some that are successful both ways. I don't think there's this way or that way.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of your input today. If you have additional questions for Kevin or you'd like to reach out to him, his email is kevin@lexblog.com. We also encourage you to follow him on Twitter @Kevin O'Keefe, and also his blog, kevin.lexblog.com. Following today's session, you will receive an email with a link to the PowerPoint as well as a recording of today's audio portion. You can email us at powerchat@Total Attorneys for any other questions you may have, as well as Kevin. And thank you, Kevin, so much for your time today. We hope that everybody has a great weekend and a very happy Halloween.
Thank you very much. It was an honor to participate.
Thanks again. Have a great weekend.